But in studio, News Check begins right now. This morning, we want to just sort of dissect the politics in this particular country and just look at the role of religion in politics, in leadership, in governance of this particular country. And joining me to have this very important conversation this morning is Bishop David Munyiri, Thagana. Thank you so much for creating time for us, Bishop.
Thank you, Serfine.
Yes, Bishop is the founder and presiding Bishop of Glory Outreach Assembly. He's also the General Secretary of the Federation of Evangelical and Indigenous Christian Churches of Kenya. Bishop also serves at the International Leadership Institute as the Director for English and Swahili-speaking countries. We appreciate your time once again.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. So our topic is quite interesting this morning. The role of religion, the role of church, depending on how you look at it in politics. I'd like us to start here. Do you feel it is the church has a role to play in politics, or it's the other way around? Politics has found its role in the church.
Well, that's a great place to begin. I think the church, let's generally talk about the religion and politics and say that there is no separation between the religious life of the people and the political life of the people, because both of them, both aspects affect the nation and affect the people living in the nation. Particularly when we talk about the African context, the whole of the African continent, and Kenya in particular. We are known as Africans to be religious people. One of the professors, B.T. Lawton, said that the Africans are notoriously religious, that there is no distinction between the secular and the sacred. And he continued to say that during birth, we will, when the child is born, we are going to see religious aspects there. When the child is growing and transitioning to teenage and adulthood, we will see the religious. When we are out in different places, it will just be religious. So there is, in the traditional African religious societies, everything about life is actually religious. And therefore, when it comes to politics, again, and we're talking about development and the development that affects the same people, it is very difficult to draw a line and say that this is a religious part and this is the political part. And when we go to church, we now narrow down to church away from the entire big picture of the religious aspect. We find that the Bible, in the Old Testament, you cannot distinguish between the religious life of the people and the political life of the people, because the kings of the nation of Israel and are actually the people who are conducting the sacrifices.
But let's look at it this way. From where you sit, if you look at the two aspects, both the religion and the politics, which one, ideally speaking, ought to be influencing the other?
The church, obviously, ought to be influencing the political life.
Is that the situation in our country right now?
It is not. It is not. It is not. And the reason that is not is because the politicians are very much interested in church only when they need the members of the church. And let me qualify that and say we have politicians who are quite religious and very good members of churches throughout their lifetime. So we cannot really put in a whole basket and say. But majority of the politicians will come to church. They will only when they need the church, and particularly a season like this or any other season. So that is what makes it look like these are two different entities. When actually they should not be like that, because they should be the same, working for the same welfare of the same nations. When I look at a person, I look at a person as a person who has religious needs, or the church needs to address, spiritual needs, emotional needs, and many other needs. When I look at the politician, I see as a person who has been elected by the people to go and promote their development, whether it, again, social infrastructure or whichever policy it is, and the same affects the same person.
All right. So, Bishop, if you look at this whole equation, and you've you've actually said that it is, ideally speaking, if factors were constant, it is the church that has to play a role in politics. It is religion that has to influence the political aspect of life. What have religious leaders like yourself done to affirm and reaffirm the society about this? What are some of the activities or initiatives that, as religious leaders, you have done that would say that this is your way of trying to influence the politics and the leadership of this country, so that it doesn't just seem as if the clergy is helpless in this equation?
Let me begin by saying that the clergy is not helpless. And sometimes we get criticism that we probably don't deserve, but we are not. And I don't want.
There's a feeling of the clergy has taken the back seat. It's sort of like it's the politicians who are now driving the agenda. They would come and give us a word, and after giving us that very enriching word from the Holy Book, then the politician comes with the politics, and all we remember by the end of the day when we go home is what the politician said. We miss what the pastor or the bishop or the reverend shared in that particular sermon. I mean, that is what maybe could be fueling such critics.
Yes, and I do understand that. But also let's understand that our nation is highly political.
Yeah.
And people are always very interested in politics, and therefore they will really look forward to hear the politician, and they will take home that. But away from that, the church is involved in prayer for this nation. And when you talk about prayer, sometimes it may not be noticed, and it is actually not meant to be a public show when it comes to prayer, because prayer is private. It is done in private as much as it's done in public, and people may not know that the peace that we enjoy in this country is highly because of the prayer that the church makes. And for the church, it is our mandate to pray for the nation. It's a biblical mandate. It's clear that when we elect leaders, then they get into those positions. The scriptures gives us the mandate to pray for them and to keep them in offices through prayer. And it warns us that if we don't do that, the problems that would affect the nation would be largely because we do not do that. So the role of prayer cannot be underestimated. Yes, it cannot be underestimated. And we mobilize the church to pray. That's critical. Secondly, the church is very involved in civic education of the people, so that they are more informed as they make decisions that affect the political life of the people. Continuously, whether there is a voting season or election season or leading to it, the church is continuously helping the people to understand the kind of people that they need to bring into the office.
And how they need to make that decision on who leads them. So you're saying this has to be a continuous process?
Yes.
That doesn't have to wait for the time when we're almost hitting the ballot?
Absolutely.
The church has to inculcate these values continuously.
Absolutely.
To know who will be the right leader.
Absolutely, and that's exactly what the church does. But the problem is, again, going back to what I say, is that we are a very highly political nation. If when we begin to educate the church and sensitize them on civic education, when there is no political or election season, sometimes they may not really take that as much as they do when we are approaching, and therefore it becomes like a lash, or rather is something that is everybody wants to think about it. And also there is a challenge of organized, very structured civic education, which is always known to come when it is probably a few months to a general election, but for the church it's a continuous process. Yes.
What would you say about in terms of outcome of the civic education that is done continuously when things are a bit calm and organized, and the civic education that is done in the rush to the next general elections, trying to beat the deadline and trying to use the minimum time that we have to make sure people understand what they need to do? In terms of outcome, what is the difference in these two ways of approaching it?
The outcome of the one that is done progressively and continuously is that people understand that much better, and there is harmony throughout the process of civic education. But the other one is managing a crisis, because we have a deadline, we have a date. Number two, it makes people, you speak to people who are already highly sensitive. They are hyper, they have already, the politicians have come, they have declared their positions. And so sometimes the members, the people you are providing civic education to, do not distinguish between your role as the church, helping them to make informed decisions and taking positions with certain politicians. Because we are very good in Kenyans in taking positions depending on who we are listening to. Yeah. So it is much better if this civic education would be continuous process and be completely delinked from the elections, because that helps the people take it well, and also not become so biased when it comes to it. And the politicians are not interested in the civic education when it is before or away from the elections.
All right.
They are not interested in that.
I want you to look at what is happening in our churches today, which leaders are invited to which church to address which congregation, and look at this in the element of objectivity and independence, and a church standing on what they believe in terms of their principles and their values. Do you think that is applied right now, the element of objectivity? Like you're saying, a church is not supposed to take sides or be seen as if it is taking sides. Is that happening in reality?
It is not happening.
Yeah.
And the reason
is that a good thing or a bad thing?
It's not a good thing. It's not happening, and it's not a good thing.
Yeah.
And the reason it's not happening is because, as I said earlier, we have politicians who are Christians who subscribe to the beliefs of specific denominations, and you'll find them whether there is elections or political things or not. But they are not in the majority. The majority will come in because they need something in that church, like the voting. So when they come in, it becomes a very delicate balance for the church to single out one, probably the one who is a member of that church and who comes there regularly, and the one who has come just because he's interested in something, because all of them are supposed to attend the church.
Exactly.
And that makes the difference, because the church is supposed to be a place for everyone. And
regardless of your political party, your tribe, regardless of your social class, it should accommodate each and every person in the society.
And we actually regard the church as like a garage of a car that you take to the garage, even if it has no problem. It's supposed to be going for servicing and all that. That's why we call it a Sunday service, because everyone needs to be serviced. Once you go through the issues of the week, you need to go sit down, listen to God's word, pray. And that, whether you are a politician or a businessman or whoever it is, that should be the life that everyone. And that's why I began by saying you cannot separate the religious and the political life of the people, because they need both. But now, when most of the politicians come to church because they have a need, it appears like the church has become the political ground, because they are not seen there usually. Now they have come. and
they will really insist on how they are spiritual and they are Christians.
Exactly.
And even read Bible verses
and give money. They're going to give, they're going to do all that. And it's a delicate balance, because really the church has a big role in growing and raising people to be good stewards of the resources that God has given them. That's a key and a critical role of the church, to grow the people in the nation to be good stewards of God's resources. Resources of money, resources of time, resources of their spiritual gifts. And this mandate does not separate the usual regular members of our church, the business people, the people in government or politics. It is the responsibility of the church to grow people, because that is the way that, according to the Christian faith, God entrusts us with more resources when we are able to be good stewards of the little that we have. And then God has gifted us very differently, and all those giftings are needed to be able to bring harmony and to bring development in the nation, to be able to get the nation to where it would like to be. And if we are not good stewards, then that's a problem.
Bishop, we'll talk about money in just a bit, and whether the clergy is at a position to even query the source of this money that is brought to church in just a bit. But I want you to look at this relationship, the religion and politics, the relationship that is there. To what extent would you say the pulpit has been abused when it comes to managing politics in church?
I would say that in some cases it is abused, and but then the picture we are getting out there is that is like every pulpit is abused, which I don't think is the true picture of the situation. And it's good that we understand that the church will always face criticism, always. Why? One, if the church does not welcome the politicians and doesn't listen to them, they will be criticized for not talking and not getting involved. Actually, the statement that we hear many times is that we have been put in the pocket. That is the criticism we will get when we are silent.
But must we allow pulpit politics? Is that the only way the church can be involved in the politics and the leadership of this country? And you know how this pulpit politics can go. Sometimes it even can end in name calling. You know, the politicians, if you give them a chance to speak and you allow them to say what they want, you know how far they can go. Must we go there?
I am not an advocate of the pulpit politics, because that is not the way it should be. However, when we talk about the pulpit, I assume we are talking about within the church building, the place that is set for the clergy for all the altar and the sacrifices. That is the wrong place for people to come and bring their politics, because it's not even meant to be a place for competition. That altar is meant to be a place for unity. It's meant to be a place where the poor and the rich can all gather together in reference to the unity that Christ has brought. It is meant to be a place where everyone comes and lives more united and not more divided. However, this church, the church can still allow the politicians to address their people, because they are elected leaders, and they are elected by these same people. And that's why I really cannot get away from the belief that the religious life and the political life should be working more in harmony.
We'll pick up from that particular point when we come back. This conversation is going on, and in this conversation we are having here, Bishop, I'd like to pick it from the fact that they're interpreting this increased and very close relationship between the politicians and the church. They're linking it to the COVID-19 pandemic, which has occasioned the ban in public gatherings, and politicians actually are seeing the church as an opportunity to get a crowd they can address and sell their agenda. What do you think about that interpretation? Could it be a possibility?
It is a possibility, but I would want to say that the church has always been involved in politics in this country.
Even before COVID? Even
before COVID. And one of the gentlemen has clearly put it, right from all those old days of the bishops whom we know, Alexander Muge, Bishop Okuru, Timothy Joya, Ndingi Mwananzeki. All those are historical clergymen who got into conflict with the nation because of the school of thought that the church should be separate from politics. And they did not believe that themselves, and because of that, they wanted to be involved in making the life better to the people. And that's why earlier on I said the church will always attract a kind of criticism, because when the church doesn't talk, the statement is you have been put in the pocket by the government. When you talk, you are involved in politics. So there will always be that. And this is a great subject to really have a conversation on, because there is no way you can distinguish between the religious life of a person, the political life of a person, the business life of a person. The church has all these people, and we have a mandate as clergy to bring holistic beings, people who are complete in their mind, in their body, in their life. That is why the church cannot keep quiet if the educational systems of a country have a problem, because we want to bring up people who are literate. We cannot keep quiet when the COVID is killing people left and right, because we have a mandate to bring healthy people. We cannot keep quiet when the political life of the nation is going wrong and people are fighting or there's corruption, because these issues, depending on how one looks at it, one will say they are political. If you speak about education, the school fees and the children going back and whatever. Some people look at that is political. When you talk about the health systems, some people will think that is political. When you talk about corruption.
But you still have a role to play.
A major role. And we cannot really separate them from the people that we are leading.
Right.
Unless we just want to bring a religious being that is only concerned about the spirit and where you become too much spiritual, of great value in heaven, but of no earthly good.
But I don't think the problem is much on whether the leaders should be allowed in church or whether the religious leaders also ought to comment or even engage in the politics and the leadership of the country. I think the problem is in the how it's done. The how it's done. That is where many people are actually having a challenge. Because when you allow these politicians to come to church, must they be given an opportunity to address the gathering? That's number one. If they're given that opportunity to address the gathering, must they be given that leeway to say anything and go as far as they want in their remarks in the church?
Number one, you are number one. They must not be given. It's not a must that they be given the pulpit to speak. It's not a must. That is not their ground. And again, we distinguish, as we said earlier, the pulpit. That is wrong for them to be there.
But do you think it's even possible or even practical in Kenya that a politician can quietly walk in church and sit and hear the word and walk out?
Yes, they do. I am a presiding bishop of Glory Outreach Assembly, and no politician will use my pulpit at whatever the message they have.
And they come?
I am the General Secretary of the Federation of Churches, and we have a position that the pulpit cannot be used for politics. However, we know very well and we appreciate the fact that the people that God has given me to take care of in the church are the same people who have voted this politician. So even if I don't give them the opportunity to speak in the pulpit because it's wrong and I don't know what they are going to say, I will still let them speak out there to their people. They voted for them. They will speak in the church compound. They can speak out there, but not in the pulpit. So I agree in the question of how, not in the pulpit, but out there. These are people that really you cannot stop on the basis that technically we are supposed to be doing the same thing. Technically, I am supposed to be helping the people grow and become better people for this life and the next life. The politician is more concerned should be more concerned with bringing up the people who are walking or driving in the best roads possible.
So you're all sort of like doing the same. You're doing the same thing.
It's the same thing. Yeah. It's the same thing, and that is why there's no way we can really separate these two. The problem is when now there seems to be that conflict whereby if I give the politician an opportunity to greet the people out, even if I give him outside there and they gather, he says things that I might not say, or he might speak some things that might divide the people, whereas inside the church I was speaking things that are uniting the people, and that's where the conflict is. It is really not even whether we should give them position to speak or not. It is the content of what they say. What they
how
say.
It's done.
Yeah, the competition aspect. Because a politician really want to say something that will definitely outdo the other person. They will want to say something that will paint them better than the other person, which is again contrary, or it contradicts the principles that we are speaking about inside there in the church. Because God unites the people. The politician divides them so that the divide can rule. And that's the conflict we are seeing. That's what we are dealing with. The clergy and the church stands for uniting the people the way God unites the people to live together, to know they are human beings, they are created in God's image, they are all one, whether as human beings with the human dignity, or whether as a nation united together by the values of that nation, or a community or village. That's what the church stands for.
All right. Let's talk about something that many think is actually a way by some of these politicians to take advantage of the loopholes to compromise the clergy. Money is one of them. They come to church and they write huge checks and they can contribute huge amounts of money, and that alone some people think would give them the power and the leeway to have their way in the pulpit and in the church and say whatever they want to say, because after all, there's a very fat check on the table. So I can actually just say what I want. I mean, how far is too far when it comes to their contribution in monetary terms to the church? What is wrong? What is right? What should the clergy be wary about when it comes to this exchange of money between the politicians and the church? What should be done? What is the best way to go about it?
That takes me back to our key role that I had hinted earlier, our key role of raising and growing stewards of God's resources. Whether they are business people, whether they are the mama mboga in the village, whether it's a politician, whether it's a professional who is working, they are all in that church and has been entrusted to me to bring them up to become good managers or administrators of the resources that God has given them. Right from their homes, all the way to their villages, to the church, and to whatever level that God has given them. That does not take away that responsibility from me when it comes to a politician or to a businessman or to the poor person, because it is about growing them to become good managers. Now, in the process of that, it becomes a problem when somebody brings in the money with the wrong motive or reason. And this is a question of motive. It's a question of the intention. If the politician is writing that big check with the intention that they are going to buy my possession or the influence of the church, or they'll get a position to say anything, and I let them do that, that is wrong. It is very wrong, and it should not be done in the church because it's taking advantage. Mm-hmm. Now, if these politicians are coming as part and parcel of either that church or the community or wherever people are coming together to do development, they are welcome to write their checks. And this nation, you will agree with me, this nation, all the way from the days of the founding president, it's a fundraising nation.
Exactly.
It is a nation of people
especially around the electioneering period. There are a lot of harambes going around, and the chief guests are politicians. And most of the time, it could be even the church requesting them to be, their chief guests in this harambe. So how do you even balance that trade when money exchanges hands? No wonder some people would be very, fearful of the fact that the clergy may have been put in the pocket of these politicians.
Yeah, well, which is unfounded, because the clergy is either put in the pocket or silent. So it's either way. But it's a delicate balance. It's a delicate balance because we hear people talking about the source of the money, it's clean or dirty. And it is very important that we really understand, unless we want to politicize this discussion and blood every money that comes from a politician is dirty. It is not the law of the church to clean or make money and clean it's not humanly possible. If you come to my church and another politician comes to the church, the businessman comes to the church, and they give towards whatever cause they are giving, I cannot, as a humanly speaking, sort out the money and say this one is clean, this one is dirty, this one. Even my own members can bring money that is not clean. I have no mandate or even authority to throw away money to a person and say this is not clean. The only thing that would bring this difference is if you make your motivation clear that I'm giving this check to you so that you can either brand this building with my name or with my political party, or you clearly tell me, I have money here that I stole or that I got through corruption.
I understand what you're saying, Bishop. I understand what you're saying. But what people are concerned about is we see leaders, some who have integrity issues, some with cases in court, some who've even been convicted of these cases, and they go to church and they seem to be like giving a very different image of themselves when they're in church and when they're in the public domain. Do you still have a feeling that the church doesn't have any role to play when it comes to questioning the source of this wealth, the source of this money, considering that you know this person and you can even see what is happening in the public domain concerning their integrity? you cannot do anything
the church
in that regard?
The church stands for integrity. The church advocates integrity. The church promotes integrity. But the church does not judge people based on either a political narrative or based on what we have read in the papers or based on what another person said. It is not our role to judge anybody. And we are very careful, among other things, not to judge anybody. Because if we became judgmental, we would not only be judgmental about the money, where it came from, we would be judgmental on every other aspect. We would be judgmental on why somebody is dressing the way they are dressing, why somebody is driving this car, why somebody built that house. Yet, our role is to pray for them, to teach them good stewardship so that God can bless them. So when we see people drive a nice car, when we see people living in a good house, dressing nice, we celebrate and we say, great, we thank God for that. But we cannot judge them and say that because somebody, we have led somewhere that they have no integrity, that we say, therefore say, you have no integrity. In fact, our role is to help them become good people, become people of integrity. Whether we are going to help them by receiving their check and putting it in the project in the church, whether we are going to help them by speaking to them before they come to the church and privately without condemning them. And I said earlier when I talked about prayer, there's so much that we do in the background as clergy that people might not know, and therefore they will probably judge us with what they see. If we call a politician, right now, personally I have a groundbreaking event on the 6th of November, and I will invite everybody, including yourself, including the politician. But I have already written and made it very clear to every politician that I'm inviting that this is not a place to come and fight anybody. It's not a political platform. It is a place to come and break the ground to build God's church in GOA, Kahawa, and Dani. And some of them, I'm even booking an appointment with them before, so that if we cannot agree on that principle, then I mean, I don't need their money. I don't need them to speak in my function.
All right.
Yes.
All right, Bishop.